There are a lot of people calling for the head of Las Vegas Raiders head coach Antonio Pierce these days after only 10 games. Nothing can make us forget about the 5-4 stretch of football the Raiders played to finish last season faster than the 2-8 start this year. That doesn't mean Pierce should get fired to me though. He earned a shot at getting his culture and program established here in Las Vegas. Guys like Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson will be first-year head coaches with the same growing pains Pierce is going through right now. Oh, by the way, Pierce is a big part of why Deion Sanders wants his son here in Las Vegas. He doesn't want his son to go just anywhere. A lot of what's happening to the Raiders this year isn't his fault, so please indulge if you will while I make my case for Pierce remaining the head coach of the Raiders. Going 5-4 down the stretch last year was a good thing for the team's morale and Pierce getting the job, but it took him out of position to draft the franchise quarterback. The Raiders picked number 13 overall, so of course they were all gone. This year's class of quarterbacks is a good one, so they could have used any one of the ones that got picked in front of them. Even Caleb Williams, who isn't playing well right now. There isn't much that isn't better than what the Raiders currently have. If he stays or goes, you gotta give Pierce credit for how he brought the Raiders down the stretch with Aiden O'Connell at quarterback last year. He had him play within his limitations in order not to mess it up. That way they can win the game on defense with field position and turnovers. The hope was that O'Connell would improve a lot for this year, but he didn't appear to have improved a lot, if at all, in training camp or the preseason. He looks a little better than Gardner Minshew, but not enough to stop GM Tom Telesco from pushing the guy he signed to the top of the depth chart. That ended up being bad for the Raiders with all the turnovers he has. Minshew has still thrown more interceptions than touchdown passes this season. O'Connell played mistake-free football for Pierce last year, throwing 8 touchdowns with no interceptions over the last 4 games. That made Pierce say if another quarterback comes here, he has to beat him out, and that didn't happen, so you know that was Telesco pushing his guy. That's not all the damage he did to Pierce's formula either. The first mistake Telesco made was letting running back Josh Jacobs walk in free agency. Jacobs said he gave Telesco and the Raiders a chance to match the offer the Green Bay Packers made, but he chose not to. Many say that was because he doesn't pay running backs, but when that running back is a big part of the heart and soul of your team, you should, especially when the plan is to run the ball a lot. I didn't want to see Jacobs leave, but I didn't think Zamir White would be that big of a drop-off either. Jacobs has run behind some bad offensive lines for the Raiders and still got his because he knows how to make guys miss in the backfield and turn it into at least a decent gain. He's always among the league's leaders in yards after contact too. Neither White nor Alexander fit the bill there, so the Raiders are going to have to look for a running back in the next draft. Getting rid of guard Gray Van Roten to sign Cody Whitehair was a horrible decision too. If you think about it, the only guy that was different from last year on the offensive line was Whitehair in there for Van Roten. Van Roten has experience in the power gap scheme and the zone blocking scheme and did pretty well in the Raiders' power gap scheme last year. Whitehair is purely a zone blocking guy and hasn't been very good at that the last couple of years, so why him? Then Telesco drafted the best center in the 2024 NFL draft that was projected to go in the first round and the second round. Now that was a good thing, but the big mistake was signing Andre James to a big contract in the previous free agency. Then he compounded it by leaving James at center and moving Jackson Powers Johnson to guard without an offseason due to injury. What did James do for Telesco to give him that big contract and start him at center over Powers? Powers is a phenom, so no matter what happens with James, Powers should remain the starting center. From there, all the Raiders have to do is find themselves a couple of guards and they'll be in business. And they'll probably do that this coming off season. Then there's former offensive coordinator Luke Getz and his atrocious play calling. I try to bear with him, but he was an awful play caller. I often wondered if he was trying to score points. There were times when the Raiders got near the goal line that he threw the ball 3 times when the run was working and ran it 3 times when it wasn't. Getz is one of those guys that should be a career position coach. It turns out that it was him and not quarterback Justin Fields when they were together with the Chicago Bears. Don't blame Pierce for that hire either. His choice was Cliff Kingsbury, who's killing it with the Washington Commanders right now. Kingsbury backed out of coming to the Raiders at the last minute because the dollars didn't make sense to him. Telesco doesn't pay running backs, and I guess he doesn't pay coordinators either. He should only be allowed to make decisions on the draft and with personnel. He got fired from the Los Angeles Chargers for his choices and coaches. This is another area where Pierce was negatively affected by something beyond his control that Telesco had a part in. Outside the draft and Wilkins, Telesco got to pick it up. There are also things that are beyond Pierce's control that aren't anyone's fault. That great defense that was number 1 in the NFL over the second half of 2023 didn't quite make it to 2024. It was supposed to be even better with the growth of a couple of youngsters and the acquisition of interior defensive lineman Christian Wilkins, but they have too many injuries. It all started with edge rusher Malcolm Kuntz injuring his knee and going out for the season 4 days before it started. He was one of the right buttons Pierce pushed to get things going last year. He put Kuntz in the starting lineup and he racked up 8 sacks the second half of last season. How much better would the Raider defense be with him in the fold? Then of course there's Wilkins, who got injured in week 5. These injuries robbed Pierce of a pass rush that would have had Wilkins and Kuntz with Max Crosby, one of the best in the business. And how long is second-year corner Jacorian Bennett going to be out? That's another big piece. So it's bad decisions with personnel and coordinators on offense and injuries on defense that's destroying Pierce's winning formula, not Pierce himself. I'm not here to say Pierce is perfect or he was even ready for the job. The truth is no one's ready for a job like that, so it's no surprise he was screwing up some things with game management among other things. I'm sure owner Mark Davis knew that too, and the plan was to hire him for what his strengths are and let him grow into the position. Again, if you go get a guy like Johnson, you have to go to the same growing pains, and Pierce is already a year in. Telesco fumbled the running back position, the quarterback position, and the offensive coordinator position for him too, so he had plenty against him. Then there's the injuries to the defense, so you gotta give him another chance. Thank you for watching, see you next time.